In the last couple of modules, we talked about how to address conflicts with stakeholders and mediate between different stakeholder groups. Now we're shifting our focus to an equally critical area: conflicts within your team. Resolving conflicts with team members may be even more important than resolving conflicts with stakeholders. While stakeholder conflicts can delay projects and create organizational friction, team conflicts can make your daily work life, and that of everyone on your team, genuinely miserable. Left unaddressed, these conflicts invariably end with someone either getting fired or quitting. The cost in terms of morale, productivity, and institutional knowledge can be enormous. In this module, we'll explore the common sources of conflict within product and development teams, how different team structures and methodologies influence conflict patterns, and how to create psychological safety that enables healthy conflict rather than destructive disputes. Understanding these dynamics will give you the foundation to effectively address team conflicts when they arise. Let's examine why conflicts emerge within even the most talented teams. When teammates disagree, it's often not simply a process issue, or if there is a process issue, it might be the lack of a good conflict resolution process itself. Think about two engineers who disagree about a critical architecture decision with no established way to resolve that tension. The disagreement affects the rest of the team, delaying progress and creating a ripple effect throughout the project. In my experience, though, I don't typically see conflicts around architecture decisions as much as disagreements about priority. Team members often disagree about whether a piece of work is worth doing right now versus other things on the backlog. For instance, one engineer might argue that technical debt needs immediate attention because ignoring it will slow down future work, make systems more expensive to maintain, and cause rework down the line. Meanwhile, other team members might push to prioritize a specific feature because it has a hard deadline for an upcoming sale, or because keeping a C-level executive or key stakeholder happy is politically important. For some team members, especially those with strong technical principles, it can be hard to accept prioritizing what seems like politics over what they consider the objectively correct technical decision. These different perspectives on priority represent one of the most common sources of conflict I've encountered in product teams. You can find articles online about seemingly trivial team conflicts like coding style preferences. Tabs versus spaces, anyone? While this specific example is less relevant today thanks to standardized formatting tools, disagreements about naming conventions, code organization patterns, and development practices still emerge frequently. These might seem minor, but when left unaddressed, they consume valuable time in repeated discussions and can create genuine friction between team members who feel strongly about their preferred approaches. Communication and coordination issues represent another significant source of conflict in product teams. Misaligned expectations frequently trigger problems when team members have different understandings of what they're building or how they should build it. This misalignment might not become apparent until the project is well underway, leading to frustration and blame when deliverables don't match expectations. These expectation gaps can occur in many forms. A product manager might assume certain technical capabilities exist, while engineers understand the limitations differently. Designers might envision specific interactions that developers interpret in unexpected ways. Or team members might have different understandings about who's responsible for which aspects of implementation, leading to critical components falling through the cracks. To prevent these conflicts, successful teams invest time upfront in creating shared understanding. This could include more detailed specifications, visual prototypes, acceptance criteria, or more conversation about assumptions and edge cases. Regular check-ins throughout the development process can also catch misalignments early before they lead to significant rework or interpersonal friction. As a team lead, another significant issue that can lead to conflict is failing to protect your team from external criticism. In many organizations, engineering teams get blamed for anything that goes wrong, but receive little praise when things go right. When systems function correctly and applications perform as expected, it's considered business as usual. Engineering is just doing its job. But when problems arise, the spotlight quickly turns on them. This imbalance creates a challenging dynamic where engineering teams feel they can only lose and never win. Success goes unnoticed, while failures are magnified. Over time, this pattern leads to frustration, conflict, and defensive posturing. Engineers may become reluctant to take risks, innovate, or commit to ambitious timelines. They might implement excessive process safeguards or documentation requirements that slow progress but protect them from blame. A defensive posture typically means less risk-taking, slower progress, and reduced innovation, ultimately harming the product and business outcomes. These factors contribute to a cycle where organizational culture drives conflict, and conflict resolution, or lack thereof, shapes team culture. As a leader, you must actively build a culture that prevents unnecessary conflicts by addressing these systemic issues while developing the team's capacity to handle necessary disputes productively. Handoff problems between teams are another common friction point, with confusion about responsibilities, boundaries, and expectations. Fred Brooks highlighted this challenge in the Mythical Man Month when describing the exponential growth of communication channels as team size increases. Each additional team member or team dramatically increases the coordination overhead. Role confusion can also trigger conflict, with questions about who's in charge, who's allowed to make decisions, who needs to review things, and who has approval authority. Information silos lead to duplicated work and contradictory approaches. I've seen scenarios where one person's code breaks another's because they weren't aware of interdependencies, or where design changes requirements without informing development, leading to painful surprises at demo time. Product managers sometimes update requirements mid-sprint after talking to stakeholders, creating scope creep without adjusting timelines. This inevitably leads to delayed delivery or reduced quality, followed by conflicts about why the work doesn't match expectations. Different team structures and methodologies can significantly influence the types and frequency of conflicts you encounter. Let's explore how various organizational approaches affect team dynamics and conflict patterns. One conflict pattern I've observed involves the tension between agile and waterfall methodologies, though it rarely gets described in these terms explicitly. I've seen this played out dramatically in teams where engineering has been repeatedly blamed for problems over the years. After enduring consistent criticism without recognition for their successes, the engineering team shifted their approach defensively. They began requiring extremely detailed requirements and complete designs before starting any work, effectively moving toward a waterfall model. This made experimentation nearly impossible and slowed down even minor changes. The engineers became unwilling to reference similar examples from other parts of the application. Each new feature, no matter how small, required its own fully documented design and requirements. This wasn't genuinely collaborative. It was engineering protecting themselves by ensuring nobody could blame them for misinterpreting vague requirements. Meanwhile, the rest of the company was trying to move quickly, be agile, and accept that not everything would be perfect. But from the engineering team's perspective, this felt dishonest because not perfect had consistently resulted in them being blamed. This created significant tension within the broader product team, product management, design, and engineering, until they agreed to stand together, succeed or fail as one unit, and present a unified front to the rest of the organization. This example illustrates how methodological preferences aren't just academic choices, but often adaptations to organizational dynamics and past experiences. Teams don't choose waterfall over agile, or vice versa, in a vacuum. They respond to institutional incentives, past conflicts, and perceived risks. Team structure also influences conflict patterns. In matrix organizations, the challenges multiply as team members report to multiple leaders with competing demands. Work in progress typically increases in these structures, creating additional pressure and stress that can fuel conflicts. For matrix organizations to succeed, you need strong leaders who coordinate effectively among themselves and set clear priorities. Remote and distributed teams present their own conflict challenges. I've worked remotely for over a decade and found several effective practices for preventing and addressing conflicts in these environments. Susan Whelan's research shows that for teams to develop and mature, they need time together. Time creates opportunities for honesty and vulnerability, which build trust, increasing productivity. In remote teams, you don't have the natural time together that comes from being in the same office, sharing lunches, or grabbing drinks after work. You must deliberately create opportunities for social interaction. For example, while traditional stand-ups are 15-minute meetings, I schedule 30 minutes to allow time for casual conversation and relationship building. I also schedule regular retrospectives and set up periodic calls, usually every 2 weeks, where the team is explicitly not allowed to discuss work. Instead, we talk about food, travel, pets, architecture, or whatever interests us. This deliberate relationship building helps team members get to know each other and builds trust, making them more likely to reach out for help and engage in constructive conflict resolution when issues arise. Video cameras during meetings significantly help address visual cues and prevent misunderstandings leading to conflict. And I spread the burden of odd hours meetings for global teams working across time zones, so the same people aren't always sacrificing their evenings or early mornings. Asynchronous video messages can also help bridge the communication gap when real-time meetings aren't possible. Team members can see facial expressions and hear the tone of voice even when they can't meet simultaneously. There's nothing more important for effective team conflict resolution than creating psychological safety, an environment where team members feel they can take interpersonal risks without fear of punishment or humiliation. Google's extensive research through Project Aristotle found that psychological safety was the most significant predictor of team effectiveness, above individual talent or clear goals. When team members feel psychologically safe, they can engage in what Amy Edmondson calls productive disagreement, conflicts focused on ideas rather than personalities, aimed at finding the best solution rather than winning an argument. Psychological safety doesn't mean avoiding conflict, but making it healthy and productive. To create this environment, we need to establish several key principles. First, always separate the problem from the person. Recognize that systemic issues may be at play, and assume that your teammates are good people who want to do good work. Focus disagreements on specific technical approaches or business decisions rather than personal characteristics or motives. Second, diverse perspectives should be viewed as strengths rather than obstacles. Research consistently shows that teams with diverse viewpoints make better decisions and develop more innovative solutions, but only if they can productively work through the inevitable conflicts that arise from those differences. Third, remember that the goal in team conflict is never for one party to win. The goal is for the team to move forward together, focusing on the customer or user and the end goal of the product. Work toward finding consensus when possible, but establish clear decision-making processes for when consensus can't be reached. Teams need to know that after engaging in healthy debate, a decision will be made, and everyone will move forward together, regardless of whether their preferred approach was chosen. As a leader, your role is to model these behaviors. Demonstrate vulnerability and openness to feedback. Show how to disagree respectfully by using I statements, practicing active listening, and asking curious questions rather than making accusatory statements. Focus on learning rather than being right, and publicly acknowledge when you're wrong or have changed your mind based on new information. Some of the most powerful leadership moments I've experienced came when my team observed me engaging in brutal conflicts with executive leadership. These situations, while challenging, became valuable coaching opportunities as I modeled constructive conflict resolution in high-stakes scenarios. Even negative situations can become positive learning opportunities when you demonstrate effective conflict management. Building trust is the foundation of psychological safety. Make time for one-on-one meetings with team members to understand their perspectives, concerns, and working styles. Follow through on commitments without exception. If you say you'll do something, do it, and hold others to the same standard. A team member who consistently fails to follow through on commitments undermines trust and creates conflict, so address these issues promptly and directly. Finally, maintain transparency in decision-making and always explain your reasoning. When people understand the why behind decisions, even if they disagree with the outcome, they're more likely to accept it and move forward productively. One underappreciated source of team conflict is differences in communication and working styles. I found it extremely valuable to help team members understand both their preferences and those of their colleagues. While some people might find personality assessments like Myers-Briggs, DISC, or Enneagram lacking in scientific validity, they can still provide valuable frameworks for discussing differences in communication and work preferences. I've encountered team members who are skeptical of these tools, particularly if they're administered by HR, fearing the assessments might be used to make staffing or promotion decisions. However, as a team lead, understanding how your team members prefer to communicate and work can dramatically reduce unnecessary conflicts. For example, some team members process information by thinking aloud and benefit from verbal discussion, while others need time to reflect quietly before sharing their thoughts. Some prefer direct, straightforward feedback, while others respond better to a more diplomatic approach. Some thrive on collaborative work, while others are most productive when given space to work independently. None of these preferences are inherently better or worse than others, but conflicts arise when we assume how people communicate and want to be communicated with. Cultural differences can also significantly impact how team members approach disagreement and provide feedback. In some cultures, direct disagreement, especially with authority figures, is considered inappropriate, while in others, blunt feedback is valued as honest and efficient. Without understanding these differences, team members from different cultural backgrounds may misinterpret each other's communication styles as unnecessarily aggressive or frustratingly vague. Working style differences can create tension too. Some team members prefer asynchronous, independent work with minimal meetings, while others value real-time collaboration through pair programming or frequent check-ins. Some focus intensely on one task at a time, while others may switch between multiple projects throughout the day. These differences can lead to conflicts about meeting schedules, communication expectations, and project management approaches. By openly acknowledging and discussing these differences, teams can develop mutual understanding and establish agreements about working together effectively despite their diverse preferences. Rather than expecting everyone to adopt the same style, the goal is to create enough shared understanding that differences become strengths rather than sources of friction. In this module, we've explored the common sources of conflict within product development teams, how team structures and methodologies influence conflict patterns, and how to create the psychological safety necessary for healthy conflict resolution. We've seen that conflicts often arise from disagreements about priorities, technical approaches, and communication misalignments. We've examined how team structures and methodologies like Agile or Waterfall can mitigate or exacerbate conflicts depending on their implementation and organizational context. We've also discussed the importance of psychological safety in allowing teams to engage in productive disagreement rather than destructive conflict. In our next module, we'll build on this foundation by exploring specific techniques for resolving team conflicts when they arise. We'll look at approaches for addressing both technical disagreements and interpersonal tensions, how to use retrospectives as a tool for conflict resolution, and how to rebuild team cohesion after resolving conflicts. As you reflect on this module, consider your own team's dynamics. What types of conflicts do you see most frequently? How might your team structure or methodology be contributing to these patterns? Most importantly, how would you assess your team's psychological safety level? These questions will help you apply the concepts we've discussed to your specific situation. Remember, conflicts within teams aren't inherently problematic. How we'll handle them determines whether they become destructive or lead to better outcomes. By understanding the sources and dynamics of team conflict, you're taking the first step toward more effective resolution.